Welcome to the Profit by Design podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist at Tap the Potential and the author of the 4-Week Vacation, as well as the How to Hire the Best series. And today on the Profit by Design podcast, we have a really fun opportunity to visit with Ciara Stockeland and learn about her business journey. And the other thing that you should know about Ciara is she is a fellow Profit First professional, and she specializes in boutique owners. And one of the things that I find, Ciara, that is so fun about getting into talking about profit first as it relates to niches and different industries is that we can learn across industry. So if we're in a service-based business and we don't deal with inventory, we can still learn from you and some of the experiences that you have and some of the tricks and tips and strategies that you found for helping boutique owners apply profit first in their business. So I'm really, really excited to dig into that with you. You have an incredible entrepreneurial journey. You started out in your teens as an entrepreneur and have really just grown. I mean, you have a journey of growth. And I also know that in every journey of growth, there are trials and tribulations and setbacks. So, and you're willing to share all of that with us today, Ciara. So I appreciate that. I think it's going to be a very inspiring conversation. So let me share with you Ciara's formal bio as we dive in. Ciara Stockeland has owned and operated businesses since her early teens. As a serial entrepreneur, her business mindset and tenacity led her to opening her first store, Mamma Mia, a high-end maternity store located in Fargo, North Dakota in 2006. Shortly after, she developed and opened Mode, a designer outlet store located next to Mamma Mia. In 2008, Ciara chose to merge her two concepts into Mode and develop the concept into a franchise. Her vast experience in both retail and wholesale industries led her to launch the first to market wholesale subscription box for boutique owners. That is such a cool idea, which she built and sold within 18 months. She built and sold that within 18 months. So there's some story there and there's some learning there for us. So we'll be digging into that. Most recently, Ciara has launched the Boutique Workshop, a coaching program for retailers. Ciara has been recognized as a small business champion through SCORE and most recently was awarded the Outstanding Franchise Small Business Award. Congratulations, Ciara.
Thank you.
She is active with SCORE, an organization that is the largest network of expert business mentors across the nation. Additionally, Ciara has been an active member of the International Franchise Association and an advocate for small businesses with her seat on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Council. So, Ciara, thank you so much for that. We need that advocacy, and I would love to hear more as we get into this in the interview about what specifically that involves and what you're advocating for. There are some other things to know about Ciara is that she has completed an Ironman and she's currently in training and preparing for the next. So she is a total go-getter. She currently resides in Franklin, Tennessee with her husband, Jim, their two amazing children, Harrison and Isabella, and her Great Pyrenees, Bentley. So welcome, Ciara.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. That all sounds so fancy, but like you said, I would really love people to know that those are the highlights we always share. We don't share all of the tears, the tums, the tissues between all of those highlights. So hopefully I'll get a chance to share some of that today too, because sometimes that can be the most inspiring, just knowing that people are ordinary just like us.
I absolutely agree. And the interesting thing to me is the journey of the small steps. And one of the things I say frequently is that small steps forward taken in a consistent direction lead to big change in a relatively short period of time. And it's clear to me that you have had some clear destinations in mind that you've wanted, places that you wanted to go and things you've wanted to accomplish. And you've taken those small steps and they lead to big things. And you have some big things here. And there are trials and tribulations along the way. So let's go back to your teens when you were, your early entrepreneurial days. What inspired you about entrepreneurship back then?
Yeah, so my grandfather and my dad both owned small business. So I was just always around small business conversation. So it just was very normal to me. as a child, I guess I never even thought that people didn't own their own business, because you're just so saturated in whatever your home environment is. And so when I, had an idea, or when I'd see an opportunity for producing revenue or creating value in something, it came very natural to just go for it and just try it. And so I was the crazy kid that always had a lemonade stand, and our home was located in like a back corner cul-de-sac. There was no traffic, but I was always like, I'm going to sell lemonade, even if it's just the mailman. I was always the crazy kid who was, putting on a garage sale or selling things to the neighbors. So that just came really natural. My first formal business was an acting company that I started when I was 13. I was a homeschool kid. And was actually complaining because of lack of opportunity. And my mom said, well, why don't you just do what you want to do for yourself then, make your own opportunity. And so just started this. Just started this little acting troupe, not thinking it would be a business, but it ended up blossoming into a full-on classical theater acting company for homeschool, high school, public school, private school kids, and even some college students as we grew over the next decade. So that was my first formal business venture. And then after I got married and had kids, I was still doing that and decided just to get out of that nonprofit world and wanted to go into retail. That was my next desire. And so opened my first store in 2006.
So what was it about retail that attracted you? How did you land there?
I don't really know, other than, I had the acting company, but I've had lots of other little business ventures too. So while I was doing that, there was a period of time where I would knit like little purses and little baby sweaters. Yeah. And what I found out later, discovered about myself later, is it's not the creating that I like. It's the selling piece of it. It's the dreaming and making it. So even with the acting company, it was never the acting, it was the producing. It was getting kids into the program, creating a production, selling the tickets. So with the little knitting business, it was going into these little boutiques, and I would just march on up to the counter with my box of samples, and I'd say, hey, my name is Ciara. I have this beautiful line. Would you be interested in purchasing it? And I loved making that sale. And then I'd have to go home and knit a bunch of things. And I was like, I need to hire this out. But anyway, so I think that's where I started loving retail. Like we would just travel. So we lived on the North Dakota, Minnesota border. And on the weekends and summer, we'd go over to all these lake towns. And there was all these little boutiques, and we just go in and either I, peddle my wares, or we just shop and look around. And so I always thought I would like to have my own store someday. So I think that's where that first idea came from.
That's tremendous self-awareness of that you enjoyed the producing, but not so much the in-between steps.
Yes.
And that got you on your path. So that's awesome. So as you got your first store open, and then you went on to create another business shortly after. So
yeah.
Did things go well with the first store, and you thought, this is going so great, I want to do another one? Or tell me about that process a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm always looking for opportunity, and I really like to add value to things that people don't necessarily see value in. I love being a disruptor. Like, what problem could we solve, and how can I figure out how to solve that? And so I had my first store running just for a few months. And then I had the opportunity to sell some truckloads of salvage product. And while I thought, I'm not going to put that in my maternity store, there is a store next to me that's vacant. And so what if I just opened a second concept? So it was meant to be a pop-up, just put the product in there, sell it for the owner, and then move on. But it worked really, really well. So that's why we ended up then merging the two concepts and creating a designer outlet. So I hadn't planned to open a second concept, but the opportunity arose, and I thought I might as well take a chance at it.
Yeah. So the solving problems and disrupting, spoken like a true entrepreneur. And it also sounds like you spot opportunities.
Yes.
Pretty quickly, and you move forward to seize them. So I'm really interested in 2008, you merged your two concepts into Mode, and you developed the concept in a franchise. And then you turned this to a subscription box for boutique retailers, and you built and sold that within 18 months. Like, that's rapid. What was that like?
Yeah. So we franchise, which is a whole nother conversation and a whole nother business model, really, which I did not know at the time. And now if people come to me and say, oh, my business is growing, I'd really like to franchise. I'll never tell someone not to franchise, but I really like to let people know what franchising is. It's very cash intensive. And you have to really either hire someone to really enforce operations and things like that, or you have to understand that you're going to go from what you probably did really, really well to grow the brand in the first place to now leaving that and just managing people. So franchising is really interesting business model. It works really well, but it's a very operational business model, and things have to be very planned out, lots of processes, lots of enforcement and things like that. So we grew it, franchised it, and then we ended up getting out of the franchise model and wound down the brand. I sold the brand to one of our franchisees. And then I was thinking, like, what's next for me? Like, what was that all for? It's not where I wanted it to go. I was envisioning this franchise brand of 100 stores across the country. We got to 13, and then it unwound itself, sold the brand off. So you have these moments in your business life where you think, what was all that for? What was the purpose of all that? It's not where I want it to be. Am I a failure? And all these thoughts go through your mind. But it didn't take me long to think, okay, I have a lot of knowledge in the industry. I have a lot of really good relationships. Where's the next problem that I see? And it was just how the buying side of boutiquing has really changed. So in the past, where everyone would go to market, it was almost like a claim to fame. Like, I have a boutique, I go to market twice a year. Now you have this fast fashion, you can buy online. There's all these little makers that have popped up. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, FabFitFun and Stitch Fix and all of these subscription models work so well because of the convenience. Mm-hmm. Couldn't we create a model where we'd bring the vendors to the wholesalers or to the retailers, and they wouldn't even have to leave? But I knew I didn't want to do that forever. So by this time, I'm starting to figure out what I do really well, what I don't do really well, what I enjoy in business. And what I love doing is finding a problem, figuring out how to solve it, and move on. Uh-huh. And so I knew that I did not want to have this massive subscription box that I was managing, and I was running operations people. It's just not me. I just wanted to solve the problem and challenge myself. And so I built it to sell it. So from the moment that I built it, I was looking for someone that could buy it and take it and do what they wanted with the model.
So let's dig in there. What does it look like? How is it different when you start a business and you build it with a clear intention to sell it? What are you doing differently than most of us do?
I think your decision-making is really intentional. And, that goes all the way down to, I have an opportunity to hire this person, or to create this marketing plan, or to bring in this new product line. And knowing what the end is, you have the end in mind. It's a great filter to say, okay, well, that looks really interesting, to hire this new position. Would that add value to selling this business? Or will that distract me? Or bringing on this new technology system, is that going to add value, or is that just going to muddle everything and, create a lot of chaos? And so I think just knowing what your end is, whether it be selling it, passing it on, bringing in a partner, or just growing it yourself, multiple locations, if you understand, or at least you have an idea of what that end is, it's going to give you filters to say yes and no to opportunities, instead of just going with your gut, always like, well, this feels good and everyone else is doing this, and I guess I should hire. Should I hire for what I want to accomplish 5 years from now? Becomes the question instead.
I think that is so powerful to have that clear direction of where we're headed, and then filtering all of our decisions through that. I'm a huge advocate for doing that. We talk about the survival trap a lot at Tap the Potential, and what the survival trap looks like is there's a destination. Let me try to get this on camera. And this is the present moment. And, we want to make choices that align directly with the destination. But a lot of times in business, there's opportunities and things that come along, like a new platform or an opportunity to hire a team member. And we think, oh, it's I think it will help things, or everyone else is doing it, so maybe I need to do it too. And we do it, and it kind of looks like it's aligned with our destination. But if we follow that trajectory out over time, something that's not quite fully aligned can take us very far off course over time. And so you're just spotlighting for us, like, how important it is to know what your destination is. And so I am curious, it sounds like it simplified things for you to have an idea that I'm going to be selling this. Did you have a time frame for when you wanted to sell it, or was it just?
I just really quickly, like I didn't want to get into having such a big company that I was having to hire a team or have my own warehouse. So I knew that I wanted to just solve the problem and then create something where I could say, okay, here's the problem, here's the solution, you take it and you run with it.
Yeah. So, and once it sold, what was next for you?
Yeah. So while I was building it, I was starting to meet retailers all over the country because they were subscribing.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get questions, the same questions over and over, like, how much inventory should I have? Or what should my margin be? Or I don't understand. I never look at my financial, I don't have a bookkeeper. These same things over and over. And I was answering all these questions. And then I thought, maybe I should charge for my answers. Like, this is a lot of free time, which I don't mind. I mean, I've had amazing mentors in my life too, but there's something here. Again, this is a consistent problem that I'm seeing. How could I solve this problem in a way that would make sense, produce revenue, and build another business? And so while I was getting ready to sell the subscription box model, I was starting to build up like the beta coaching side of things. I had never set out to be a coach or a consultant. Like, I had never thought that would be something that I would even do. But that was just, it was really successful to see having these questions come in, having answers and solutions, and then to see the results that clients were getting. I thought there has to be a way to deliver this in a better manner. And if there's 12 of them and 50 of them and 100 of them that have this question, I bet there's thousands of them that have these questions, because I know I did as a retailer, and I didn't necessarily have a place to turn for that information. So by the time I sold the subscription box, I was already starting to build up the coaching business.
And so what does your coaching business look like now?
So the boutique workshop has a couple different facets. The first is just our boutique workshop membership, which is our core product. My vision is to really disrupt the way that retailers think. And I know that because you're a profit first professional, you understand this. Small business as a whole thinks this way, but I'm focused on the retail industry, which is a $180 billion industry. It's massive. Wow. There's so many retailers because you can do it from your basement, your garage, it's everywhere, selling product. And just disrupt this thinking, these two things that they think. I can never pay myself, get a paycheck or a consistent paycheck. And the second thing is I'll always be a hot mess. My life's always going to be a disaster. There's always going to be chaos. So my goal is to bring the retail industry profitability and peace of mind through my core program, which is the boutique workshop. And it's just very simple because none of us need more complexity. I just take one strategy a month, one planning session a month, and we sit down and I simplify it. Retailers are very visual. So I use my whiteboard, which you can't see, but I whiteboard out like, let's talk about what a cash flow statement is. And I'm not an accountant or a bookkeeper, so you're not going to get Dr. Lingo from me. Like, let's just talk about it. It just shows where cash is coming in and where cash is leaving. And if you understand this, here's what it means for your business. Or what is margin? What does that look like? How should you concentrate on it? Where do you get it from? So we take these concepts and break them down. And then my second program is my mastermind, where we do the same thing, but we really go even a step further and do some one-on-one coaching every month, and then benchmarking. Because there's nothing more powerful than to see your results against the results of your peers in a really healthy environment. And so we work through that.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're not talking, and you said healthy environment. So when we benchmark against peers in our industry, a lot of times it's not a healthy environment. And so I think about with respect to building profitability in a business, a lot of times when we throw out numbers like 10 to 15% profitability, people are like, in my industry, we're lucky if we get 3%. And that's not a healthy benchmark. So I loved that you drew that distinction of a healthy environment and benchmarking. And I believe a lot in striving to better our best and knowing where we are now and looking at, well, if we're going to just improve just a little bit, what do we need to do? And if we're going to improve on that, and that's that ongoing continuous learning. And I love that you've got peer support built in and the one-to-one. It's very similar to the model that I found so effective here at Tap the Potential, because we need to have that peer support and that camaraderie to kind of keep us going and push us forward. But also some of the things in our businesses are complex, and we need to have that opportunity to have that one-to-one conversation, figure things out. So I know one of the areas that you're really focused on with your clients is inventory. And there's a lot of nuances when it comes to applying profit first in a business that has inventory. So, what are some of the learnings that you've had as you've dug in and explored how to simplify this?
Yeah. So we all know with Profit First, we have multiple accounts. And so the first account that I have my client set up is an inventory account. And then we do what we call Money Mondays. Some people do them on Tuesdays, kind of depending on when sales drop. But for the whole, we just talk about Money Mondays, which gives us this idea that once a week we review what's going on in our business. A very foreign concept to the majority of retailers who never look at any numbers at all. The only thing they look at is how much money is in their bank account. But instead, on Mondays, the first thing we do is look at the sales for the previous week. And then we look at the cost of goods sold associated with those sales. And then we move that cost of goods over into our inventory account. So before we ever touch our money, we know we can replace the inventory that's sold or the majority of it, or we at least have this pot that's growing for inventory at all times. And then I really work with our clients on an open to buy budget. So with the inventory account for Profit First, along with an open to buy, if you use those things, you really have a bumper. So you're no longer just buying. Because what happens with like small businesses, which we combat this with Profit First, is we usually, our OpEx is crazy. So whatever comes into our account, we're like hiring marketing and we're paying for this and we're hiring another person. Well, with retailers, what they usually do is whatever's in their account, they just go crazy with inventory. So they don't even have money left to spend on OpEx. So they're always like super short because they have to buy more product and they think they just buy and it'll make sales, or that's what that person down the street's buying. I should buy more of that, or it's really fun. Like I love it because it's all majority is women and we go on shopping sprees with our store. Yeah. So this just gives that bumper. So that's the first thing that we do with Profit First is an inventory account. And then we do the traditional accounts and we wrap that into some other inventory tools and systems that I've created just to give some really good peace of mind. Like I know what my numbers are saying, even if it's ugly. Now I know what my numbers are telling me, and I start to have this plan of how I can move forward and build profitability.
So let's dig in there just a little bit, because you said even if it's ugly, you at least know what the numbers are. Why is it so important when it's ugly? Because most of the time it is. When we start Profit First with clients, it's ugly. And that's why Profit First is so important and so valuable. So there's that pain kind of just acknowledging, oh, this is worse than I thought it was going to be. So what's the value of knowing your numbers and going through that cringe of this is ugly and this is painful?
Yeah, I think, regardless of if we choose to look at something or not, it's still reality.
Yeah.
So if let's say you're wanting to train or you want to lose weight and you can't figure out why, if you hire a dietitian or a food coach, they'll probably have you food journal. Mm-hmm. And it's because we think we know what we're eating all day and we think we know what time and we think we know how much pop we're drinking or how many Starbucks, whatever, until we write it down and we're like, whoa, that's way more than I thought. Like I'm snacking all day long, or I'm not drinking any water. I thought I was, right? So we write it down and we become aware of it, and it's really ugly, but then we have a starting point. Yeah. So the same thing with our numbers, until we, regardless of if we look at them or not, we are or we're not profitable. We do or we don't have a good margin. Like looking at it doesn't change it. It just shows us what we need to focus on and work on. So in my mastermind, it was interesting. One of our requirements in the mastermind is that every Monday, again, to follow our system, you enter your numbers into the global benchmarking report so we can benchmark. And so one of our mastermind participants, she just wasn't entering her number. So we reached out, why aren't you? And she said, I just don't want to put them in because that's not what I want to see. And so I'm so embarrassed to even put it in there. And I said, okay, I totally get that. But regardless of if you entered or not, your numbers are what they are. So if you put them in, then we know where to work from. Like we know where you are actually at. And there's something so powerful about writing things down, speaking them out loud. It's like, okay, now the truth's out there. Let's go. So I think that's the important part.
Yeah. And we've just gotten some thumbs up and hearts here with what you're sharing, because when we get it written down and we acknowledge here's where we are, all of a sudden it becomes easy to see where we can make some simple changes. And it's that's what I love about Profit First, is that there's some initial simple changes that become so obvious once we have the data and the numbers in front of us. It gives us a sense of what felt out of control. Oh, all of a sudden I'm starting to feel some control over this. And as a psychologist, one of the things that I notice about Profit First for myself and for our clients is the peace of mind. And you've mentioned peace of mind multiple times. And when we have that peace of mind about our financials in our business, then we have that opportunity to be more creative and think about, other opportunities that we could be pursuing, or how could we do things better for our top clients and customers. And Profit First is that foundation that really takes care of us as the business owner first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's acknowledging, hey, I need to be taken care of here in this equation. And it's not just about the inventory and trying to bring on team members, but the business owner needs to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
So how have you seen Profit First smooth out the entrepreneurial roller coaster?
I think it just really makes you aware. I like to tell my clients, you start bossing your money around instead of your money bossing you around and telling you, you can't sleep at night. You don't have enough of me.
Yeah.
You need to spend me here. I want to go here. I want to do this. And our money throwing little temper tantrums and we just like following along because we don't know what else to do. Suddenly you say, no, I'm the boss of my business. And here's what I want this dollar bill to do. I want this dollar to go to my savings, and I want this dollar to go over here and make me more money in my inventory account. And I want this dollar bill to go over here and pay for my child's education. And you become the boss of it. And there's something that's really, like you said, as a psychologist, I'm sure all these, so much more than I do about how the mind works. But there's just something so powerful when you take control, even if it's only of $10 in your business or $100. I have one client, and she is an advocate for Profit First. She has a very small business, which I love. And she tells people this, I'm not a multi-million-dollar business. She's a very small business. But she said, she was getting so bitter with her business. And her husband said, you need to pay yourself. And this was before she started Profit First. And she said, I love it. She said, well, I'm worth more. He said, even if it's $10. And she said, well, I'm worth much more than $10. So I paid myself nothing. Right? And that's what we do. Yes. And so she said, once she started Profit First and then started working with me, it started with $10. It's no longer $10, but there's something about, okay, yes, I am worth more than $10, but I'm going to start with 10 today to give my work some value and to show that when I put work into something, I get compensated for that. And suddenly you find that it just snowballs, and suddenly it's 100, and then it's 1,000. And now she's doing vacations and she's just loving her business and free. I mean, it's an amazing story. So
that's incredible. Yeah. And so you commented, you're not an accountant or a bookkeeper, and here you are teaching this retailers how to do Profit First. And I'm not an accountant or bookkeeper, and I was attracted to Profit First. And I know I came into Profit First because I needed to solve my own problems. And that's why I talked to Mike McCallows and I said, it's the same thing that your client said, like, I have this growing business and I never get to pay myself more. It's always like just barely breaking even. And what's going on here is I wish somebody would just tell me a budget. And that's when he started, he took out a piece of paper and he started showing me Profit First. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, so what's your story? What brought you to Profit First and how has it impacted you?
So it's kind of probably not something that, well, I mean, it is my story, but probably not the typical Profit First story. So as I started coaching retailers, I kept hearing them talk about Profit First. And I really stubbed the idea of it because how they were coming, they'd say, oh, we heard you're a really good coach. Do you do anything with Profit First? Can you help us with Profit First? And I was like, you know what? My method works really well. I'm sorry, I don't do anything with Profit First, but I'm glad to help you, because it was coming from this idea that it was a magic bullet. And I could hear that. They're thinking it's a magic pill. Like, oh, I can't figure out my cash in my inventory. So if I just follow Profit First. And so I was like, oh, this is just another fad. Like, no, we're not going to do Profit First, whatever that is. Let's just, follow the method. And my method and system works fine aside from Profit First as well. But then when I started thinking about, could I actually take the Profit First method and wrap it into what I'm doing so that it's not presented to retailers as here's the magic pill. Pay me X amount of money or read this book and you'll be fine and make millions of dollars, because that's not true. It's discipline more than anything. Profit First is just discipline. Like, it's just teaching you to be disciplined and consistent. So I thought, what if I could take it and I could wrap it in and present it like, absolutely, let's do Profit First. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fun and you probably won't like it at first, but it's part of the method that I teach. And when I came at it from that way and started exploring, I thought, you know what, this could be something that I could learn and I could become a professional certified coach and bring this as another part of the puzzle, another piece of the puzzle to my clients. So that's how I actually came to it.
That's fascinating, because you came to it because of, like, there was pressure, like people kept bringing it to you. When I started Profit First, I was the very first Profit First professional. No one had heard of it. And so I would go to my clients and I'd be like, this is magic bullet. I didn't use that language, but I said, this is going to help you with so many challenges in your business. And I could see, because I had started to experience it myself, but I could see this laundry list of problems, like trouble meeting payroll and trouble figuring out how much to budget for growth. And I thought, this is going to help you with this. And I would go and I would try to get them to want to do it. And I got all kinds of pushbacks. And then when I said, you've got to open all these accounts and you're going to do these trainings, they were like, no. So I really appreciate your experience where you had people coming to you and at first you were resistant. And I think, that just speaks to our human condition with change. You're like, no, but I've created works just fine. And you don't really need that. And that it's kind of being marketed as this magic pill, or, that's the way that the public is grabbing onto it.
Yeah.
And so, but then you started thinking, I wonder what's possible. And that's that really cool question that starts to open up these possibilities. And now you've really integrated it, and you're not just doing Profit First, you're doing business consulting with them in the whole of the business. And that's a piece of it.
Yes. Yeah, it's an option. And it's nice too, when I read the book the first time, I thought it was so confusing. I was like, how would this even work with retail? We don't have mats and subs. Like, what is that? And so again, going back to like loving to solve a problem and being a disruptor. And I did an interview with Mike and Ron a while ago and talked about the inventory account. And they're like, that's so cool. So I was like, okay, so let's take the Profit First model and let's make it work for retailers. Like, we need an inventory piece to it. And we have cost of goods sold. We don't have mats and subs in retail. We have cost of goods sold, or in wholesale or any product-based business. So that just replaces that, right? So we just move that lingo and we still have our real revenue that's driven from that. But yeah, it was just figuring out a way to present it to my clients so that they understood that this isn't going to solve your problems overnight. It's part of a long-term solution. And there's other things you also need to do, but it's a part that will help you get there a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the business advocacy that you're doing. How did you get involved with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business, and what kind of advocacy are you doing?
Well, I've really taken a hiatus now, which is great. I love just having a break and working on my business. But for several years, I was on the Small Business Council, and I would go up to DC and we'd go lobby on the Hill. My main objective was always just to tell my story. It wasn't to try to get a change to happen that day, because that's never going to happen in politics anyway. The best counsel I ever got was the first time I went to the Hill, and the coach, if you will, that I had that was just kind of walking me through what the process would look like, said, just so you know, you aren't changing minds today. You're just starting a new conversation. And that was really good advice. And so for me, it's always been about just telling the small business story. I think anytime we get stuck in a bubble, no matter where that is, Washington, D.C., or in our hometown, like we all do, we get stuck in our own groups of people, our own neighborhoods, our own industry. We lose sight of the bigger picture. And it's important for us to break through that for other people and just tell them our story. And so there were so many times I would do like minimum wage, went and talked about that. There was a big, especially with franchising, there was a couple things that came up. And I went and I just said, okay, so if you want to do this, if you'd like to take wages from here to here, let me show you how that would or would not work in a small business in North Dakota. I was living in North Dakota at the time. I'm like, here's my actual budget. So here's what I have to spend. Here's what I make, and here's what I have to spend. Tell me where I would find that extra money. And so just like laying that out and genuinely and politely asking people to just think through things. Some were resistant, but there were so many that were like, thank you so much for actually showing us that, like actually telling us that. We never thought of it from that perspective, right? Or just a small business story about like when I was in franchising, what it meant to be a small franchise. I'm not a McDonald's. Like
Yeah.
I had, 6 franchisees at the time. I'm nothing like McDonald's. So to lump me into this big, like you're a franchisor, so you're this is not fair and it's not right. And so let me tell you my franchise story and why I'm franchising, because I want to bring more jobs to my state and I want to bring more tax revenue to my state. And so that's the kind of advocacy I would do, is just getting up in front of people if they let me. I did a couple, different opportunities of testifying and stuff. And it was all about just, here's the story. Here's where I'm coming from. Because people can't deny your story.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
they can't argue your story.
No, they can't. And it really is breaking things down at a granular level and saying, here's what this looks like in real life. And the Profit by Design podcast, we're all about, this is real life entrepreneurship. And a lot of times there's not a lot of extra money floating around in a business to deal with these issues. So I want to say thank you for small business owners everywhere, for myself, for you taking the time, because you took time away from your business, your family, and you went and you did these things. And that's tremendous. And we need more small business owners out there like you sharing our stories. And I really feel like I'm big on disrupting hustle culture in entrepreneurship, and that work supports life. And I just think we need more stories out there of people who are making intentional decisions like you're teaching to be profitable and to have a healthy business, and that it brings you peace of mind, and that also allows you to have a higher quality of life as an entrepreneur, because that's the piece that I feel like is always like at the bottom of the list. Yes. What is our quality of life like while we're doing all these things out here in the world, and creating opportunities and those things and creating jobs for others. So we need to be looking at the quality of life for entrepreneurs. So I appreciate that you are out there doing that. Share with our profit designers who are in a retail space. If you've been listening, now there's someone out here who can help you specifically especially with the biggest challenges of inventory and how you apply Profit First. But you have a class that you offer, and it's a free offering, I believe. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Profit First for Retail. It's just a few recorded videos where I just break down exactly what we've been talking about today. Like, how does inventory play into this picture? I talk about, the allocations, those scary things that we hear, like what should my percentages be? That's what I'm asked a lot right away. Like, I said, okay, let's back up and let's talk about what actually matters, which is consistency and starting really small. So in Profit First for Retail, I just break these things out and make it really edible. So bite-size, easy to chew pieces where you can just take one thing and apply it and feel comfortable with that in Profit First, and then move to the next thing. We just ditch this big, scary, thought that we have to figure it all out in order to make it work for us. So if you head over to my website, theboutiqueworkshop.com, you'll be able to scroll down and just find that Profit First for Retail. And that's recorded. And then I have a free masterclass coming up where we'll touch on Profit First a little bit, but we dive into inventory a lot, May 16th. And that's also just at the same website. If you up at the top, there's like a fun little scrolly bar. I did nothing with it. My tech girl does that, but it's really cute, where it just says click here for the free masterclass coming up. And that's another one that if you want to dive into Profit First, but then also just how do I manage my inventory? How do I create a buying budget? That's all in that free, and that'll be a live class.
Fantastic. Those are two great resources for our listeners. And I know you also have a podcast. So share about your podcast.
The Boutique Workshop podcast. It started out just, I do a lot of free education in my free book Facebook group. And so we just turned those into podcast episodes with Beatty. Now we have a lot of fun interviews. I just interviewed a gal who follows Profit First with me, one of my clients who paid off all her debt in under a year. And she's completely transparent about how stressful and ugly. I love this subject because I feel like it's taboo. We never talk about all the debt, and we just feel like imposters, and we feel so guilty all the time, so much shame around it, especially women entrepreneurs. And she dives into that. So there's just really fun interviews on there. We drop something every Tuesday.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Ciara, and sharing your story with us. And I think you have inspired some entrepreneurs
Oh,
to
good.
take those small steps and to always keep the focus on let's be profitable here. That's
Yes,
the way we make things better all around is to be
that's
profitable.
right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes.